Hello, hello. Welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio, where we talk exclusively about the Beatles here on my channel. And I have two very special guests that I'm bringing on, and one of them has been a frequent guest on the show, and one was a recent guest on the show who I'd like to have on more often because he was such a delight to have on. We have DARYL EASLEA, who is the editor of Record Collector magazine. Yes, we're both holding this up. Back in January, this issue came out, which was devoted exclusively to Paul McCartney's solo career. There's a lot of great chapters all throughout this issue, and every single album is reviewed from his solo career. The live albums, the classical albums, you name it, The Fireman. It's right here in this issue. And we also have with us Owen Lynn, who's been on the channel, as I said, several times. And he actually contributed a piece for this issue where he reviewed Paul McCartney's album New. And we're going to have him on later on my channel. There it is, Owen's article, to talk about Paul's new album. But welcome, guys. Great to have the two of you together for this show.
Lovely to be here, Ken. Thank
Pleasure.
I just started a new feature, as some of you may know. It's called The Deeper You Go. And the whole idea behind it is for my guests to pick either the Beatles as a group or one of them as a solo artist and list 10 deep tracks from their career. And specifically, no hits, none whatsoever. Of course, there can be some complications because, as I said before, there are certain songs that were hits in different parts of the world. I mean, Once Upon a Long Ago is probably unknown to a lot of American music fans, but it was a big hit in the UK and Canada and Europe and Australia. Is that a deep track? There's bound to be some songs that my guests have chosen that you might dispute whether it's deep or not. But these are songs that are favorites of theirs. I'm not asking them to rank them necessarily. They're just 10 songs. And in this case, since they both contributed to this McCartney issue, they wanted to do one on Paul. So we're going to have each of you list your 10 one at a time, but we'll discuss each one that you've chosen. And it'll be pretty interesting because, you know, it'll bring some attention to some songs that maybe some fans haven't paid enough attention to or given enough love to. Okay, so why don't we start with DARYL? I'm very curious to hear your choice of 10 deep tracks solo McCartney, which means everything really post Beatles.
Well, I think, it's that classic one person's deep is another person's sort of shallow. And that whole, there's one which I know is an American hit that wasn't a hit over here. But there are so many. And I mean, I think that's the great thing that you discover. And certainly when I did the magazine, you discover a McCartney album and realize, there's 3 or 4 sort of these deep cuts that no one's ever really listened to on each one. And in this modern world, you just have to look at the sort of streaming numbers where you see, the big banner ones with huge amounts, and then these sort of other ones which are just, obviously there are a lot more than what an obscure band would have, but quite meager in comparison. Anyway, my first one was recorded back in 72 and released in 73. It is Loop First Indian on the Moon.
All right.
From Red Rose Speedway. And it was a shame when I actually found out it was recorded sort of relative, so early in the process when Red Rose Speedway was going to be a double album. Because I'd love to have thought it was sort of his reaction to something like Dark Side of the Moon and him sort of, Paul plays prog, which in a way it is. And when you think of what was around at the time, even in, 72, Floyd were doing the space rock. They just sort of brought metal out, which was more accessible. And of course, they all, populated Abbey Road, although this was recorded at Olympic. But I think there's that thing where you just hear it and you hear, on one hand, he can knock out around that time, sort of My Love or Mary Had a Little Lamb is coming out. And then he can do Loop First Indian on the Moon, which frankly, few people have ever heard it. You know what I mean? It's like even people that listen to Red Rose Speedway sort of almost, fast forward it because it's a curio, I think is the best way for it. And I love it because of that. I love the sort of, you know, the choral vocal, that sort of almost sort of, you know, Native American sort of feel to it. And obviously, you know, space was the place at that point. And, you know, this was still recorded when the moon landings were happening and everyone thought we were going to be living up there by now. So that's what I would like to throw my hat in the ring and give you a loop to start.
I definitely think the Dark Side of the Moon connection is there, but how about all the songs like Space Oddity or
Absolutely.
Rocket Man?
Yep.
I'm the Urban Spaceman. You know.
Yeah, I mean, when you think, and I mean, we're barely old enough to remember, and Owen, you know, being, as we always like to call you, the whippersnapper. But you know, at that time, living through the moon thing,
Yeah.
was quite amazing because everything, you know, little kids dressed as astronauts, and you know, even when you had like the James Bond film, you know, Diamonds Are Forever sending up the, which is my favorite Bond film, as you know, Owen, much to your disgust. When, you know, when you see them doing a fake moon landing, you know, reflecting what was happening at the time, was it a conspiracy? You know, it was everywhere, and I think for Macca to go into space was a treat.
But James Bond went to space in Moonraker.
Yeah, that was a terrible scene. I always take that view that you can believe in something, however fantastical it is, but when they did that, it's like, no, you actually can't do that. Yeah. I mean, you know, you can have a laser shot between your legs and it does up the glass table, and, you know, a man with a claw trying to get you. That's all semi-believable, but space, nah.
One of the things that I love about Paul, and you were just talking about this, Daryl, is that he can go in such opposite directions musically, going from Mary Had a Little Lamb to this.
Yeah.
But then I also see something like Cream Crory or Loop First Indian on the Moon as the seeds of what became the more experimental McCartney 2, Fireman, Press to Play, stuff like that. Some of those recordings. So I love when he does stuff that the average person out there, no pun intended, wouldn't know is Paul McCartney. Of course, it's an instrumental, so it'd be hard to tell that it's Paul. But whenever an artist goes out of their way to put out something that's not what you expect, because he's got the pop sensibilities that he does for putting out all the hit records that he has, very commercial stuff. You know, he can crank it out like nobody else. And then he does something like Loop, you know. So
no, I'm a big fan. So there's my number one. I've thrown in.
Okay.
Any comment, Owen, about Loop?
No, I think it's excellent. I think it's a highlight of the Red Rose Speedway single album. I'm a much bigger fan of the double album that came out in 2018, but this one ranks up there. It's wacky McCartney, and I mean, one of my favorite McCartney albums is McCartney 2, and that's wacky McCartney with a capital W.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Check my machine, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, what's your second choice there, Daryl?
Oh, aren't we going one on one?
Oh, we could do it that way. Let's
go one on one off.
You'll bounce back and forth here. All right. Yeah. What's your first choice?
Well, since you very kindly mentioned that I wrote about the new album, I think I'll go with a track from the new album, and it's Alligator, which is just this chiming little acoustic number that doubles as something of a rocker, and it could easily fit on the Help album. In fact, some days when I'm feeling a bit Machiavellian, I'll replace It's Only Love with Alligator, because I think it's a much better track. But you know, it's got that pastoral chiming guitars, and it's got bouncy McCartney vocals, and it's very much it's coated in that sort of 1965 influence. It's it's not quite acid rock yet, but it's folk rock, and there's the melding of acoustic and electric. He played it at a television in a live interview. He just did it by himself on an acoustic guitar, and that's where the brilliance because he didn't have a lead guitar player and a drummer. It was just him and an acoustic, and it still sounded fantastic. It's very chorus heavy. Apparently, it was written because he missed his wife Nancy so much. he wanted to tell her, yeah, so I need somebody to talk to. It's got a nice bluesy thing. I'm surprised it wasn't a hit, and I think it's a case of ageism. If he'd written it in the 1980s, it probably would have been a big hit for him. Around that time, we had like the Stray Cats and a lot of Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and a lot of return to like basic acoustic guitar. So it might have been a hit for him if he'd released it in 1981.
Okay. I never heard that version you were talking about, the acoustic one, but I'd love to hear it. Let me know what show that was on if you can
Yeah, it's from 2013, so an album I am actually old enough to remember because I was 20 in 2013.
But I'd like
So
to
was that the Zane Lowe? Did he do it on Zane Lowe or where?
I think so, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a note. Okay. Excellent choice there.
Yeah, no, and also I think it was fascinating that Mark Ronson worked with him on that, and that was the moment of Mark Ronson really at his sort of peak, the sort of 5 years after doing Amy Winehouse. He was just like the geezer to go to. Uptown Funk was just around the corner, and again, to me, that's just that amazing way. Like, in a way, Macca's a little bit like Madonna in that sense of seeking out who's right there on that cutting edge.
Yeah.
But then often they don't, where Madonna would make a record sounding like Mark Ronson. All these producers that come in make a record that sounds like Paul McCartney.
That's one thing about the new album. You have so many different producers, and yet I
Yeah.
can't tell a Mark Ronson song from an Ethan John song or a Giles Martin song,
Yep.
So that's pretty unique. I could say that about Flowers in the Dirt as well. So
I think Trevor Horn's influence is there on some tracks like Rough Ride.
Yes.
In what way?
Just that it's very bassy, and of course Trevor Horn is like a bass player extraordinaire. And it sounds like some of the stuff he did with the Buggles. Is it the Buggles or the Bugles?
Buggles.
Buggles, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to you, Daryl.
Well, so I'm doing chronologically, but I mean, should I just mix it up and throw one in from?
Doesn't matter. We're not actually rating these. It's just
No. I mean, I've just done them in year order. Well, okay, I'll go with "I'll Give You a Ring," which brings in to sort of one hand clapping, because hearing it on here, to me, it made me think when I first heard it, it's like, right, where have I heard that from before? Because I know it's not on an album, it's there, and it just shows to me. I mean, it's one of those borderline sort of, is this high art or is this Seaside Postcard, which is throughout McCartney's work. I mean, you hear him doing Blackpool on there, where you have the fact that the northern roots are never that far away,
right.
But you hear something like this, which is like a British music hall song, and other people would have made a whole career out of a track like this because it's great and hooky and jazzy and upbeat and happy. And it was a sort of sketch that was done in, and we heard it on one hand. Well, we didn't hear it on one hand clapping at the time, but it was just sort of popped in there. And then, there it comes out on the B-side in 82. Was it 82 Tug of War?
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like it's an A-side in anybody else's sort of lexicon, but with Paul, it's just we'll stick it out there now.
Is it kind of frustrating sometimes that so much good material is tossed aside as a B-side, in his catalog?
Well, my view, it's like a big box of sweets or something, or what's it, Forrest Gump and his box of chocolates. It's like you sort of come round, the fact something like that, when you listen to something like Press, Discuss, or you hear some of the other A-sides, you think, well, this is a better song. But I think that's what makes him so special, that he's just happy to you know, for me, everything seems to have equal weight in his, you know, in his eyes. I mean, obviously he knows Hey Jude is bigger than, you know my name, look up the number. Not in my book, obviously, but you know, that's there. But I think he does, you know, he loves his Mary Had a Little Lamb as much as he loves his Let 'Em In or his silly love songs. And I, you know, anyone else would think, well, actually, no, they're better. But they're just different.
Okay. It's just that you know, when you think about those kind of songs, the dance hall numbers, and you immediately think of When I'm 64 and Honey Pie and Your Mother Should Know. And I wish I'll Give You a Ring and Baby's Request, and those songs would be just as well known. You know?
You
That's just
dropped out there, Ken. I missed
Hmm?
your middle bit.
What's that?
You dropped out there. I missed your middle bit. But
Okay. What I said was the stuff that he did, especially in the Beatles, that harken back to that time dance hall music.
yeah.
64, Honey Pie, those songs are
Oh,
better
yeah.
known because the Beatles recordings, whereas I'll Give You a Ring, I think is just as enjoyable, and Baby's Request is up there, and You Gave Me the Answer is up there, and they're not as well known.
Yeah, absolutely. And something like You Gave Me the Answer is equal to or better than Your Mother Should Know.
Hmm.
I think it is.
In my book.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I love that choice. And I was familiar with one hand clapping for many years and watching Paul do it on the piano.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if I probably saw the bootleg of one hand clapping after I heard I'll Give You a Ring as the B side of Take It Away.
Mm.
So just to know he brings back all these old songs, some of them he doesn't forget,
Mm.
perfects them later. So yeah, great choice. Owen, you're next.
I am. Daryl wrote a fantastic piece reappraising Back to the Egg, and it made me reevaluate that album. So my next one is from that album, which is After the Ball, After the Ball, You Were the One. I mean, it's Adrian Sinclair, who co-wrote McCartney Legacy, described it once as sort of like a Rod Stewart type ballad, and I can totally see that. I mean, it's instead of covering Mine for Me, Stuart probably should have covered After the Ball. It would have been this sort of hootenanny, wonderful New Year's Eve special where with a nice crispy voice and the malt in his hand, and it would have been he could really sell it at his concerts. It's McCartney at a piano. I mean, the fact that he can deliver such a spellbinding vocal just at a piano is something. I generally prefer the slower ballads on that album to the rockers, although Getting Closer is top notch. Yeah, I need to reappraise that album because over the years, more and more people have said it's fantastic. I mean, I think Harry Styles has said it's one of his favorite albums. So I think so. I'm starting to. I'm happy to change my mind about these albums. I did a list. I attended a listening party for Flowers in the Dirt over the weekend, and most of us said it's not as good as we remembered it. Myself and Stephen Cockcroft both said we think Press to Play is probably better than it. It's just not as confident sounding a record.
Interesting. You know, Flowers is my favorite McCartney album, and Press to Play is my second. So,
Okay.
you know, I love the whole debate about McCartney in the 80s. I did a show with Sam Wiles a few years
Yes.
ago about was Paul really lost in the 80s? And, you know, they always build it up so that Flowers in the Dirt was his comeback or, you know, a return to form. He didn't lose anything with the Press to
No.
Play, and he did all that incredible stuff with Phil Ramone. You know, so
Yeah.
I don't know,
I
but
mean, Flowers in the Dirt is a very stadium heavy album, so like it has these big monsters like this one and My Brave Face, but it also has some of the stuff is a bit meandering, like a Rough Rider Figure of Eight, which I'm not too keen on. Whereas I think the standard is leaner on Press to Play.
okay. Well, I think that you know, I admire Paul a lot because of his diversity, which you can find on so many of his albums. I think Flowers of the Dirt might be the best example of that. But in terms of experimentation and adapting to new sounds, I love Press to Play a lot. I like the work that Hugh Padgham did with him. I like that, especially something like Hang Glide, which wasn't even included on the album. There's another instrumental which is very new age-ish to me, and I love when Paul steps out and does things that, the public doesn't expect from him. But his real fans know that he's capable of doing just about anything. So, and back to the egg, I will say, I've noticed a lot of people are covering Arrow Through Me more days. And I think for the people who miss when Paul rocked a lot, there we go. Have getting closer and spinning on an old Siamser and Rockestra theme. So glad to see you here. And they miss that edge, that rocking edge from Paul. I think a lot of those people like to, go in that direction with Back to the Egg, and they favor an album like that over some of his other Wings material, the lighter stuff. London,
for sure.
Whatever.
Did you, Daryl, say it's like the continuation of Abbey Road?
Yeah.
Do you know, I'm having trouble. The sound, my internet connection's unstable, evidently.
All right.
So I'm missing part of what you're doing, which is such a shame.
Okay.
Well,
I'll type.
You want me to try and repeat what Owen said?
No, I just wonder whether I should come out and go in again, or go out and come in again, even.
Okay, you can try doing that, and while we're doing that, we'll get to another song with Owen.
Just tell me what it's going to be so I can, and then I'll come back to that question you just asked.
I'm going to do One More Kiss from the Red Rose Speedway album.
Nice. Right. On that bombshell, I shall return.
Okay. All right. So, Owen, what would be the thumbs?
Not gone yet? No, I'm still here. Hold on.
Okay. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear, that there's a lot more love, it seems like, for Back to the Egg these days. So,
yeah.
And maybe, when people read Daryl's article about that, some fans will appreciate it more. But what would be your next song? You said it's another one from Red Rose Speedway?
Yeah, One More Kiss. Maybe one more kiss. I mean, it's a nice country ballad. It's it's bolstered by I think it's Henry McCulloch playing this country-esque guitar hook, which of course he would have developed while touring with the Irish show bands. Because, I mean, as Daryl likes to point out, I'm too young to witness the show bands. But during the 1960s in Ireland, it wasn't a case of like it was in England or in America. There wasn't like Rock and Roll Central. It was these people playing these nice songs in dance halls, which is where people like Rory Gallagher, supposedly my doppelganger, and Henry McCulloch would have harnessed their sounds. A lot of it would have been these kind of schmaltzy ballads that they weren't too keen on, but it would have been a place for Henry McCulloch to develop his sound, and he must have mustered the country and western style of guitar playing. So it's beautiful. I mean, I don't think he was quite as spontaneous a guitar player as Lawrence Juber or as Jimmy McCulloch, but when it came to like soul and when it came to country, he just brought so much tone and timbre and texture, and it just accentuates so beautifully off the acoustic guitar. I don't know why this wasn't released as a hit. It would have followed naturally from My Love.
Okay. I honestly think Big Barn Bed would have been a hit. And I'm a big fan of Get on the Right Thing, although I don't know if that would have been a hit at all. But yeah, Daryl, Owen said One More Kiss was your choice.
Yeah, lovely choice. You're right. I mean, I think it would have been a very strong follow-up to My Love. I mean, I adore Big Barn Bed. That's one of my favorite ever since I was a kid, Mac and Numbers. And I almost see that in a higher league to be a sort of deep cut. But I think you're right. I think One More Kiss just has that feel, and you're right about Henry McCulloch's playing. And again, it's kind of like an advert for one hand clapping. But what is fascinating is when you hear the version of My Love on there, and it's almost like Jimmy McCulloch is almost so in awe of Henry McCulloch's guitar solo.
Yes.
He plays it like a sort of beginner in a guitar shop plays it almost. Brilliant on so many other things, but it's almost a bit like, how am I going to play this?
Interesting. We were commenting on the podcast Talk More Talk about that recording of My Love, and that Jimmy's guitar playing on the song was kind of restrained.
Mm.
Maybe he's trying to wait till he fully fits into the band, although he already recorded juniors for him.
Yeah.
And that great solo from Jimmy in that song.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think he was being himself. I think there's always that issue when a guitarist or anyone comes in from a fills in for someone who's already done it. It's how do you do you copy it? Do you develop it? Do you just do it completely differently? When record of that magnitude, I mean, everyone knew how that guitar solo went at that time in 1974. So it was almost so respectful. It just almost collapsed under the weight of expectation, almost.
Yeah. And Paul was so pleased with Henry's solo that he wanted Henry to play it the same way all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted Jimmy to play it the way. So, all right, what's the next song, Daryl?
Well, so this is my the one I would have said had not cut out. While you were talking about Back to the Egg, I thought I might as well get my Back to the Egg moment in. And this is one where there's that, the difference in the countries, because to me, Arrow Through Me is still largely hidden. I know there's been some great covers of it. Erykah Badu and Richie Havens, of course, did it very early on. I think this is quietly experimental in the middle of what sounds like a conventional Macca ballad. There's no guitar on it. There's no bass on it. It's done on the Moog, as I believe people say, but it's all on the synthesizer. And you have this thing where you got McCartney synthesizer, drums, and a horn section. So in one sense, it's so pared down, and it creates this beautiful ambience that just sounds so. It sort of envelops you. You listen to it, and you're just taken off into that world at that point. And I think we said before that sequencing and everything, maybe it shouldn't have been buried after the loudest rock number McCartney had done in several years. That was certainly in the UK to split his audience. I get the sort of the quiet after the loud, but if ever there was a sort of side 2 track 1 track, it was that to sort of reset and to take you into that beautiful side with After the Ball and Million Miles and all of that. And I think that track certainly paved the way for the experimentation on McCartney 2. And while it was you had it as a single and it was a sort of minor hit for you, over here most people still are blissfully unaware of it. So it needs a good sort of advert, or Hey Jude is running up the charts here because of the moment in England and Europe, the Euros, the football tournament, soccer, and England's key striker is a guy called Jude Bellingham, and everyone's singing Hey Jude, and it's starting to sort of ripple in the chart. So Arrow Through Me needs something like that.
They did use it in the High Fidelity series.
Right. So I haven't ever had the pleasure.
I didn't know that. I haven't watched it myself. Lawrence Juber told me that when I interviewed him.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
I marvel at the composition itself, because it's very different, and there's a lot of
I'm trying to find my Japanese pressing of it behind me here. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I'm never too far away.
I
know. But there's my Japanese CD as well. Not that I'm obsessed with one record that he did. He did lots of other records, including some with the Beatles, I believe. But I just think it's a fascinating track, and to me, one of his greatest sort of slightly left field ballads.
it's a ballad, but it's also got an element of jazz in there, and the way that
Sure.
it's structured melodically, and he bounces around with different notes, and you know, he'll jump around. It really requires a lot of vocal range.
Mm.
Aerothermy. It's a tough song to sing.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, yeah, that's me. That's my third one.
Okay.
So Owen's one ahead at the moment.
Is he? I thought you both have three each, right?
Oh, we both had three. I thought because I dipped out. We're three all, are we?
3-all. Yeah, yeah.
Marvelous.
England 3, Ireland 3.
There you go.
All
Go
right.
on then. You go ahead.
Okay. So
Oh,
now
it's
you're on
your turn.
your fourth one, Owen.
Okay. Okay, so I need to be very careful with this title because it could get me cancelled. So I'll just say Frozen. So it's on the McCartney 2 album. I mean, it's a questionable title. It was a questionable title in 1980, and McCartney was called out in interviews in 1980. These days, I really don't think you could announce that title on air. But there's no denying the melody is stunning with the rising cadences, the Asiatic feeling. It's a beautiful melody, and some suggest it inspired Aneka's Japanese Boy, which came out in 1983. This was a Scottish singer who had a hit in 1983 with Japanese Boy. She wore a kimono. Now that is probably cancelable these days.
Okay. I'm making a note of that because I didn't hear that before.
Oh, it's similar, like, I mean, da, 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 but it's some that might get thrown out, of course, because it's a very common cadence and such. But it's a beautiful instrumental. I think I think it might be his finest instrumental. I mean, on Miss America, there's like a pointless drum solo. Front Parlor is okay, but this one is just a lovely, like the and with the bouncing drums and the lovely melody on top of it. It's a very, the only issue is the title, so I'm not going to say it on air.
So that song was Japanese. Well, I mean the one that it led to, the one that influenced it.
Japanese Boy. Well, it may have led to it. Japanese Boy by a singer called Aneka, Aneka. I think she was a one-hit wonder.
Okay. All
I
right.
think yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Used to
I like
dress in Japanese costume, but she was from Scotland.
Okay.
Yes.
Different times.
Yeah.
I like a lot of Paul's instrumentals, so it's tough for me to say what his best is. But and go into Standing Stone, the instrumental of Celebration is absolutely gorgeous as an instrumental. So that's just me. All right, Daryl.
Um, Again, you know, Beauty on the B-side, Love Come Tumbling Down, which was out there on Beautiful Night.
Uh-huh.
Again, it's just a minor work, you know, and he started it before, didn't he? He was recording it when he did the Phil Ramone sessions. So I think it was another example of, you know, what we said before with Give You a Ring, where something was shelved.
Uh-huh.
The idea was there. You know, I often wonder how he decides to sort of say, well, this I'm going to fully develop and I'll bring in the orchestra and, you know, all of that. And this I'm just going to leave, you know, as it is. And again, you know, it's got that lovely, you know, he's doing a bit of third person in it, but I think, you know, it's got the soulful voice is there. He's in that sort of the full throated thing. And again, you know, I'd sort of largely forgotten about it because it was just, you know, this was the era of the CD single when you know, you had the three versions of whatever, and it was you lost track of which one and were you going to buy it for one, you know. Over here, it was a sheer ploy to just get a record in the chart. So you buy one on 1 week, one on the second week, one on the third week. And I just think it complements, even though it was from earlier, just that lovely, loose, down home feel of Flaming Pie, which to me is like has got that looseness of the three McCartney albums, but a more sort of professional version of it because it's more produced.
Mm-hmm.
But at heart, it's still like, you know, let's go down and, you know, have a smoke and get the guitars out and see what happens.
Okay.
So again, I think that's you know, another little curio.
It's interesting. We had Sam Wiles on my show just to do the first installment of The Deeper You Go, and he picked that song too.
Ah, cool.
We have to give it more of a listen because it wasn't a song that grabbed me. You know, to me, it was the clear B-side.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, it's, you know, I'm not making a case it's you know, one of the greatest things he's ever written, but I think it's just got that little feel to it where uh, again, I love those, you know, and I'm not a musician, so, but I just think when you have those sort of, I call them minor key McCartney numbers, where you just feel he's being bluesy fundamentally. And I think that, and I think the instrumentation on it's interesting, and that sort of, you know, I'm not quite sure what that noise is, the keyboard thing that sort of, you know, in the intro and those bits there. So give it a go. I mean, I think that's the beauty. I mean, I'm going to go back and listen to One Kiss, and I'm going to listen to Frozen because I haven't heard that for years. And that's, you know, that's the beautiful thing with the broadness of this catalogue and the breadth of it. It's not, you know, with the Beatles, it's sort of very, here are the albums, here are the singles. You know, we sort of know it because it's so finite. Whereas McCartney, you just constantly, there's these wormholes and ting. You know, you go down.
His
Thank
catalog.
you. That's my number 4.
Yeah.
Ticking off here.
Owen, you're next.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the new album, and I'm going to talk about a song that didn't get the attention that that the slighter, in my opinion, Early Days got. It's On My Way to Work, which is about his early days going on a bus, peering over the city, and just contemplating the here and now. It's a fine bit of lyricism on his part. I think it's much sharper and shows a much more poetic side to him than the more ham-fisted Early Days did. Early Days, many have regarded as a dig at the likes of, say, Mark Lewison or Ian MacDonald or the scholars who were writing about McCartney's life. I'm not in any position to say whether it is or it isn't. But On My Way to Work is I see it as a portal into Liverpool, as him returning to the 1950s, meeting George on the bus, and it's about, you know, just meeting the people on his way. It's got a lovely little melody, and it's got this almost George Harrison-esque guitar in the middle of it, where it rocks out a la Let It Be or something on the Let It Be album, and it's like a nice salute to the Beatles in the way that I think Early Days is a little bit more ham-fisted. But I think this one is the one that should have got the attention, not Early Days.
Okay. I wouldn't necessarily make a comparison because I love both those songs, but I mean, Paul had a statement to make with Early Days that there are people out there who seem to think they know more about the Beatles than he does. You know, I know that Paul has said that there was a moment there where he met this very young girl and he told the story of something that happened in the early days and she was correcting him. It didn't happen that way. You know, it's like, can you imagine if you're Paul McCartney being told off by a young girl, if that's how it really happened? And that's what led to him writing that song. But yeah, On My Way to Work, in some ways, as Paul gets older and he writes about his life, his past life, and he's more personal, sharing more, you know, of his history with us, it's more alluring, you know, and it's more attractive. You know, I think a lot of people have felt that his lyrics have gotten more mature in time, and I think that in some ways he has grown lyrically as a songwriter. You can always, you know, him as a musician and the melodies that he's written from the very beginning, he's never lost his touch ever. If anything, you know, he's always been one of the most prolific songwriters. But lyrically, I think he's grown a lot. And I think people tend to like, you can always try to think that, well, this has to do with the Beatles. And sometimes I think it does. You know, the songs we were singing, definitely about him and John, for example. But yeah, On My Way to Work is one that I think deserves more attention. Definitely. Wish he did it more in concert. I saw him in upstate New York. I always forget if it was Buffalo or Albany, probably Albany, and he actually did that song. I think it's the only time he ever did it live.
That one, the revolving new slot.
Yeah.
The track comes out. I mean, it would be, you know, it would be lovely if he had the time before it's too late for him to sort of, you know, do a little residency somewhere and play some of the albums, some of the tracks, you know, you're never going to hear, because of course,
Yes.
you know, you have to admire those stadium shows because they're so perfectly tuned. And of course, they have increasingly become slightly more obscure in their songs they collect in there. But it would be lovely to hear him, you know, play Arrow Through Me in concert, or, you know, My Way to Work, or, you know, there's those songs, basically the tranche of things in from the 80s that never got played at all in concert. And you just think it would be lovely to hear some of those things. But hey,
My dream is I wish he would just do either one concert or a tour where he's doing the songs that he wants to do, that are favorites of his, without thinking about what the audience wants. You know, songs that are particular favorites that he's proud of, that he's never brought out in public live. That would be a real dream for me. You know, in some ways, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot because I love Todd Rundgren a lot as an artist, and he's one of those people who pretty much does what he wants on his own terms, and he does the songs that he feels like doing, and he makes a few concessions, and he plays some of his hits, and that's it. And I appreciate artists that do that because it represents them more and how they, there you go.
I was listening to that just before I came on.
Oh, good. Great version of Strawberry Fields Forever. And
But no, but that classic thing to do, you know, to have an album with your own, like The Verb to Love, one of his greatest songs, but it's on an album with the other side's all cover versions.
But when an artist does what he feels like doing and chooses his own path, it's more honest, you know, to his fans of what he is. Nothing wrong with wanting to please your fans. That's how Paul.
But then I do love his, you know, his thing about saying that when he saw whoever it was, Jerry Lee Lewis or whatever, he didn't play the hits as a kid. So I mean, his shows are perfect for that, because if you wanted to see, and considering, you know, with the prices haven't been announced over here, but, you know, considering it's not going to be a couple of dollars to see him. Yeah, my American reference there. I'm hip. I can say that. You know, you're going to spend all that money, and you know you're going to want to hear him sing.
Hey Jude.
Hey Jude.
Here Today.
Yeah. Here Today.
I wish he'd do another tribute to John other than Here Today. I know how deeply personal that song is and how proud he is of Here Today, but he can cover any John Lennon song and that could be a tribute.
Yeah. It would be great, actually. I tell you, from seeing Let It Be again recently, the new version of it is, and the great thing I felt about it, I know you're not asking about it, but was after seeing Get Back for so long, one, if there is a criticism about it, you know, I didn't want to hear One After 909 ever again after the 19th time. And Dig a Pony, bless it, is not the highest art they ever did. But when suddenly you hear them really for the first time on the roof, it just absolutely blows you away. So to hear him do something, if he was to do Don't Bring Me Down, Don't Let Me Down. Sorry, I'm working on various different things. You know, Don't Let Me Down. Can you imagine Macca doing that in the full sort of Let Me Roll It voice? Even bring the two together.
But when you think about the songs of John's that Paul is especially enamored of, like Strawberry Fields or Tomorrow Never Knows, you know, imagine if he did Tomorrow Never Knows in concert, you know.
Well, I mean, it would be astonishing. I mean, that would be in the way that when the Stones went over here, sort of Manchester was happening, and the baggy beats and all that around the turn of the 90s. You know, the Stones incorporated that into Sympathy for the Devil because of, you know, basically it came out of that in the first place.
Yeah.
And it was astonishing. I mean, just to think of him going off to Tomorrow Never Knows, just leaving the drum loop on for, you know. Anyway.
Okay.
There we are. we digress.
It's easy to get lost in conversation here. So
Yeah.
are we up to you, Owen?
Uh,
Oh, you
no,
just did On My Way to Work. Okay, so
I
now,
think it's me. I'm going to go 83 and So Bad, which again is one of those records that I just love it. It's that when you got that sweetness, and a couple of my others are similar to that as well. When you got that absolute sweetness in his delivery when he's going in the slightly higher register,
hmm,
and something as basic as "Girl, I Love You So Bad." I mean, the amount of people that might write that down and think, oh, I could never sing that, or sing it as sort of like holding words,
mhm,
sort of, baby, baby, I love your eyes, or something. You just don't really do it, or you'd think of other things. But sometimes you need to say it. You need to state the obvious, and it's just got that sweetness. And I always think of it as a sort of perfect partner with the man on that album.
hmm.
When Paul's doing his sort of Pocket Isley Brothers, and it's just perfect. And I'm going to come back to that with another one of my choices, but I just think it's got that lovely thing. And when I said about records, I don't think he's ever played out, songs he's never played out.
Mhm.
Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely? And I suppose there is some sort of trajectory there, the sort of arrow through me that
Yeah.
and onwards. I suppose I just, I like. I mean, I love him when he's shouting, but I do love him when he's sweet.
Yeah,
So
well, every now and then in concert he does use his falsetto voice,
yeah,
which he uses prominently here on So Bad, just like
yeah,
he did on Girlfriend. It's
yeah.
very like that. So yeah, what do you think of that choice, Owen?
I like So Bad a lot. I mean, it benefits from Eric Stewart's harmony as well.
Hmm.
Of course, Eric Stewart was the master of harmonies because a large part of 10cc's repertoire was harmony. The four of them would go into a vocal booth and sing together. I mean, songs like Donna are all about harmonies, and Une Nuit à Paris.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love the song So Bad myself. Go ahead.
No. And you've got Ringo, you've got Paul and Ringo playing, so you've got 50% of the Beatles playing it. And, he clearly liked it enough for it to be in
Give my regards to Broad Street.
thank you, the film.
Yeah.
But, again, it's another one that another artist could have milked to death somewhere, and it's just left hanging in the mid-80s. And
Yeah.
that's when we part company with it.
It's a simple melody that's really lovely. And I've always enjoyed it. I just wish that other ballads that he's done, like on that very same album, Through Our Love, is one of the greatest love songs I think he's ever written.
Yeah,
And that wasn't even a single.
yeah.
Um, Only Love Remains deserved to be a much bigger hit than it was. And but So Bad certainly has its fans out there. I'm certainly noticing that in all my work. A lot of people are pointing to that song a lot. So I enjoy it a lot. Owen, what's your next one?
So on the topic of Eric Stewart, I'm going to go for a Stewart McCartney co-write with "Move Over Busker," which is just a fantastic rocker. I mean, I interviewed Eric Stewart, and he said he was disappointed with "Angry," the way that it was, changed to like this middle of the road rocker with Townsend and Collins. But "Move Over Busker" is just fire. It's firing from the cylinders. It's got this heat, this heroic vocal from McCartney. It's got a great chorus and that guitar hook. Oh, that guitar! I mean, that should have been a live number. I do not know. I mean, Rusty Anderson could really wail on that one. I mean, it would sound, and he still has a pretty good voice. I think he could still deliver it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh, I agree with you. Boy, when you
Yeah.
said Eric Stewart, I thought you were going to jump all over Footprints because I know how much you love that song.
All in good time.
Okay,
I have to say, I know I'm really gonna listen more there, because I was sort of, was doing other things at that time and listening to other things, and it just, I think after Broad Street and No More Lonely Nights, which was so astonishing, I just sort of plugged out somewhere from it, and all that sort of press to play era and the attendant stuff just sort of passed me by, really. And then back to Flowers, and I've never, you know, it's not often I do that, but there's certain periods of the Stones where that sort of happened as well, where it's, you know, the career's that long. You know, I was completely over everything till about 82, and then it sort of drifted a little, and then back from 88. So I
You never
apologize.
had that period for me where McCartney was.
No, I apologize. I'm obviously a lightweight fly by night.
No. We all have our own opinions, and that's what makes you know, podcast shows what they are, and you bring to light, you know, your own insights on all these songs, and hopefully we get to appreciate these songs even more. So yeah, Move Over Busker, definitely. I could see that as a live song, no doubt. Daryl?
Let's go. One of my favorites. So McCartney 2 is obviously full of this experimentation, and Coming Up is just such a, you know, phenomenal single in that the slightly wonky version on the album. I just think is so brilliant, you know, to get all that noise out of, you know, some machines and your own talent is just absolutely amazing. And yeah, of course, you know, the Temporary Secretaries and the Check My Machines, and you know,
Bogey music.
bogey music, all you know, all that stuff that's referred to. But the one for me that really, aside from that, which tickles my fancy, is On the Way. And I think this just sort of sits there, and it's an example of, you know, Paul, to me, just thinking, right, let me try a genre, let's do blues, and let's see if I can do it. And he just sort of cranks out guitar playing and a solo, and this incredibly emotive, engaging blues number. And that's it. You never hear of it again. It's sort of there. I've done it now, and off. And you know, that's one that you can play to people and they're surprised it's him, because it's so sort of accomplished. And you know, it's that's why he's sort of, you know, why he is and who he is, because he can do that and do it so sort of effortlessly. I mean, you know, people have said he's close to being a musical genius, and you sort of think, you know, I don't like everything he's done. I'm not, you know, a blind, oh my God, it's Macca and he's God. But you just think, wow.
I don't know how anyone can dispute that he's a musical genius with all that he's given us, you know. But it's got to tell you something that on the Art of McCartney compilation, that B.B. King covered that song.
Yes.
Master of the Blues there, so he must have thought highly of it.
Yeah. Well, you can't say fairer than that.
Yeah. All right, Owen.
I'm going to stick to McCartney 2, and I'm going to go with Summer Day's Song, which I just think is just a beautiful number. I actually tried it last year. I got up just in time for sunlight, and I played that song in the background, and it was just meditative. You could see it, the keyboards. They coincide with the light dipping onto the ground, and it's about McCartney in embodying the nature around him, experiencing the beauty around him, and just enjoying everything with just these beautiful, almost Bachian keyboards. It could be played on an organ, but it's being played on a synthesizer. It's like classical music. It probably led the way to like the classical music he did in the 1990s. It really, I can't praise this song enough. It really is just stunning. It should be used in a film. I can just imagine, like, say, Julie Delpy walking along as she realizes she's always been in love with this character, and in the background, and McCartney's voice glistens over it. I don't know why they haven't used more of his music in soundtracks. I mean, it seems Scorsese seems to use Lennon and Harrison. He used George Harrison a few times, he hasn't used a McCartney track. I mean, Marty, if Martin Scorsese, if you're watching, and we know you are, we suggest you use a McCartney track in your next film.
Okay.
You heard it here first, Marty.
As you can tell, Daryl, Owen has a very vivid imagination.
Oh, well, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Not at all. I think, I mean, he's absolutely right. And, you think of the power of some of those songs and the fact that there are so many things you haven't heard, you don't know. It could be quite a thing. So I'm really looking forward to listening to that again because I haven't heard that for ages. So yeah,
there's certain songs that really benefited from being in films, and we can talk about that with the Beatles and Twist and Shout, for example.
Yeah.
And, but McCartney, a lot of his songs have been in films. I'm trying to think of the Tom Cruise film.
Vanilla Sky.
Is Vanilla Sky?
Jerry Maguire.
What's that?
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire. Vanilla Sky's in it, isn't it?
I think that Mama Miss America was in Jerry Maguire. Yeah.
No, Calico Sky, not Vanilla Sky. I'm just.
That's Cameron Crowe. Vanilla Sky, but it didn't seem to help McCartney songs at all. And Father's Day with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal had Young Boy in it, and The World Tonight, and that didn't help Flaming Pie too much. That wasn't a successful film. So
Live and Let Die was quite good in that Bond film, though.
Oh, no doubt about it. Okay, so let's see. What do we have next here? No,
me, isn't it? Is it?
Oh, okay. I'm losing track.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to new. I mean, this is like the latest I get. I was very conscious. I thought, well, should I, put something in from the last record or things? But I love Save Us from new because I think it kicks the album off a treat. I think again, what we said earlier, the producer that wasn't mentioned of the three, the other one is Paul Epworth.
Right.
Again, was sort of, the hottest producer at the moment. He'd sort of taken over from Mark Ronson because of his work with Adele. And it just had that lovely, a classic track, One Side One, album opener with that. So, almost the Rush of Sergeant Pepper done for the 21st century. You were straight in there. You were off on a journey. The stall was set out. It just had that sort of propulsion that I think that some of the best Macca songs have. So it's sort of, I'm not saying it's one of his greatest works. It's the lyrics are sort of not brilliant, but the overall feel of it and the fact that he could still make a record with a contemporary producer who was like 30 years, 40 years younger than him and do it so well, to me is a tribute to him and to his taste. I think one thing he's had more or less throughout, apart from a few sort of glaringly terrible lyrics in his career, he's always had very good taste in his musical partners. The choice of artwork he's used, the choice of company he keeps.
Okay.
And I think that it's borne out by this track here. So, Save Us.
Yeah. Do you tend to, just out of curiosity, do you appreciate or respect artists who try to go for current producers, whatever the hottest sounds are, the cutting edge sounds? Or would you prefer artists stick to what they're best known for? I mean, there are a lot of people now who really love early McCartney. That's the pure McCartney sound that he put out in Ram and the first album and Wildlife and all that. Or do you admire him more when he works with the Mark Ronson or, anybody else, the Hugh Padghams and
well, for me, I mean, I think it's just that fact that when you do that, you run the risk of sounding dated. you know, because you're captured in a very, very sort of specific time where you know that's a Trevor Horn drum sound, or the Hugh Padgham has that sort of very trebly, you know, mid-80s sound that everyone had. I mean, it wasn't just like there. But when you find, you know, like McCartney 3, when he goes back to sounding like how he sounds,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's plus and minuses for both. I think some artists cling slavishly to the new producers, maybe a little too much. But, you know, some do it really well. I mean, what Andrew Watt did with the Stones, I thought, you know, sort of split the crowd, but I thought it really worked, because it's like, well, look, you come into that point. I mean, McCartney did it when he went, you know, when he got the younger band in 20 years ago.
Right.
It's like, let's make ourselves sound like what people know, rather than, you know, doing jazz versions, the long solos or whatever. So there's a long answer to a short question, if ever there was.
It's very good. I mean,
What did you think, Aaron?
there'll always be certain fans that it doesn't just apply to Paul McCartney. They would like artists to stick with the styles that made them famous to begin with, production wise and songwriting wise. I mean, there are people who like change, you know, and are quick to adapt to it, and there are people who want to stick to, you know, I don't want to call it formula, because Paul has been anything but a formula artist. So, all right, Owen, what's next?
So I'm going to the year I was born, 1993, and I'm going with Wine Dark Open Sea, which is on the Off the Ground album, and this is a stunning piece of composition. I mean, the lyricism, the high hypnotic vocals. I read on a blog that they described as like a Neil Young-esque number, and I can see that the way the chiming guitars. It's just haunting. The guitars flow like the river. They're decorating. It's one of his most accomplished records. I mean, I don't think the Off the Ground album is a brilliant album. I think it's a bit schizophrenic. It's trying to be a rock album, and it's trying to be a ballad album, and it's neither fish nor fowl. But on this song, he just captures it perfectly. His mission statement is beautiful. Is it the last track on Off the Ground?
No, it's before Come On People.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go. You know, he ends it with this, like, I mean, rousing stadium number, whereas he didn't need to. He had all the power in this acoustic ballad, which is just him and Linda singing these beautiful harmonies. They're soaring over the rivers, and they're just having a wonderful time, and inviting the audiences to join with them.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad to see that's another song that I think has gotten more recognition. And Paul put it on Pure McCartney. It's one of those songs that I thought, you know, when he does the more obscure songs, like I think you know, Owen, I love Don't Let It Bring You Down from London Town. He put that on Pure McCartney, and I think that it heightens people's awareness of those songs when you put it on those kind of collections. So, all right.
Yeah, no, I think it's a real smasher. I nearly had that on my my list. It's very interesting how we haven't doubled up yet. There's only 3 more to go, so let's see. Right, this is an obvious. This is one of the bigger end ones, but Beware My Love. I hear it every time I hear it. I mean, I mean, for me, Letting Go is my favorite, or one of my very favorite McCartney songs. But I think recently that's actually had enough recognition to sort of take it over the top, if you will, with it being in the live show and it being, you know, so. I think it had its renaissance when Rock Show came out again. I think Beware My Love sort of hasn't. And again, it's a premium shouty Macca doing that thing where, you know, right, I can do heavy rock, you know, I can do this, of course I can. And just that, you know, the edit and the album version, and also that version with John Bonham playing it, which is you know, fantastic, because I think it's, you know, it's great. I mean, it does sound a bit sort of welded on, you know. John Bonham had a very, very, very familiar style that we know, and I think Joe English did it better. But what a great record! That whole, you know, the descending piano, the drama that he can bring. I think it's done beautifully on that.
Yeah. the keyboard riff, the da 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 da
Yeah.
throughout the
And then,
song.
again, it's Wings at the Speed of Sound is a funny old album, really, and I think Luke Haynes wrote about it very amusingly in the magazine that it's a bit like of course you can all write your own songs, but they won't be as good as mine, sort of thing. And Beware My Love, oh, storming, love it.
Okay. And I disagreed with that writer.
Yeah.
Time to Hide is one of the killer songs on Speed of Sound.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Wino Junko I like, not as much as Medicine Jar, but Wino Junko is a good
Yeah.
Anyway, very good choice right there. I always love that whole long introduction with the acoustic guitar on that, how it all builds till you get to the first verse. Okay, Owen, what have you got left? We got a few more.
Okay, well, yeah. So Daryl wrote a fantastic book about Peter Gabriel that came out in 2012, was it?
13.
2013. Yeah, I read it when I was in university. It was fantastic. Anyway, the next song I think Peter Gabriel could have covered himself, which is "Keep Undercover," which is on the Pipes of Peace album. Yeah, I could see Gabriel, going emulating the vocal "Love gonna keep you out in the morning" and bringing that style and crescendoing into that shrill shriek. It's that McCartney thing of he's putting 3 or 4 songs together and they just fit like a jigsaw. It's a gift he had. We see it on Abbey Road. We see it on the Band on the Run title track, and he's doing it again here. I think Pipes of Peace has risen in popularity since that James Dean Bradfield interview, which was about 10 years ago. I think it's more popular now. Its critical stock has risen. It wasn't well received critically in the 80s for whatever reason, but it has a lot going for it. I mean, that song is just top-notch pop. It's up there with his inventive pop numbers. You could hear it on the Ram album, you could hear it on the new album. It's timeless. It's not soaked in like 80s stuff like say an average person is or some of the tracks in Flowers in the Dirt are. But it's just magic, manic McCartney alliteration.
Yeah,
it's funny. I never heard Peter Gabriel in that. Pretty Little Head is very much like a Peter Gabriel song to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear Peter singing that. I can picture Paul writing Pretty Little Head after listening to Peter Gabriel. So
maybe he did.
I just can't hear Peter singing Keep Undercover, but
maybe Phil Collins could have sung it instead.
No. I mean, I think I'm going to listen to it. I mean, that's the great thing that whenever something like this, you get a chance to listen back, you reappraise. And I hadn't thought that before, but now you've said it, yes, I can see it. I can see it. And
okay.
I'm going to go
a few more left.
Do that. Right. 2 more. So again, this is a sort of well-known sort of under the radar one, but again, emphasizing just how you can put this on a B-side, you can put it in an album track, and others would make a career out of it. I sound like a broken record, but just that beautiful sort of setting, sort of a disquieting comfort that you can have in some of Macca's tracks, and it's Loving Song from Venus and Mars. I just think that line, happiness in the homeland, again, to me, within that sort of guitar bit that takes off from there, I just think, to me, that's McCartney and love and family and being at home and all of those things with that sort of, otherworldly sort of feel to it, because it's not a sort of conventional love song per se, and it's not conventionally arranged. That lovely feel of it, it's crepuscular, if you will. It's of the twilight. I think it's got that lovely feel to it, so I'm a huge fan.
You're not alone. Should I bring up Sam Wile's name again? Because he mentioned that song too, and I said, boy, Owen's going to be happy because I know that you love Lovin' Song, but I didn't know Daryl did.
There you
I
go.
would be surprised if that's one of the remaining two from Owen.
No, that's so I've got two left, have I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
Okay,
one left.
so one left. I thought so. Yeah, one left.
Yeah, one left. I've got one left because we swapped places when I dropped
Yeah.
out. My internet went down.
Okay.
Well, if I've only got one left, you've already spoiled it, Ken. Footprints.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's by far and away the best of the Stuart McCartney co-writes. I think it's a ballad that rivals McCartney's work on the Revolver era. It's just so insightful, so pictorial. I mean, it stemmed from like Eric Stewart coming to McCartney's house and talking, saying, oh, it's beautiful outside, and McCartney then saying, it's beautiful outside, and the two of them just writing it there and then. So the spontaneity just ripples into the song. They're looking outside the snow, they're looking at the people around them, and the way that it just changes. I'm not a musician, so I don't know if it's a chord change or is it the middle eight, but the way it goes from snow white blanket and then goes to the and the Spanish guitar. I can't praise this song enough. I said this on Two Legs a couple of years ago. I said I really can't. I mean, there are two Stuart McCartney songs that I think are beyond words. One is for Prince, and the other is Tough on a Tightrope. I don't know why Tough on a Tightrope was wasted as a B-side.
Yeah. Tough on a Tightrope, another gem. But yeah, McCartney has this knack for writing about these people who are lonely characters, and Footprints is another one like that. Very haunting song. I love the whole production behind it. It's just really brilliant. No, I between that, going from Footprints into Only Love Remains, I mean, what a shining moment. Those two songs back to back. I mean, my God. I mean, Only Love Remains to me could be his greatest love song in his solo career. I certainly think so. Well, you don't think so, Owen, but that's okay. Anyway,
Maybe I'm amazed.
well, sometimes I have trouble thinking of that song as a ballad. Well, it is a love song, but it's just got so much power and intensity to it. Yeah, I suppose. But Only Love Remains is a 10 out of 10. It's as perfect a song as you could make.
I really am gonna have to go back and listen to Press to Play because because he was on the Royal Variety performance doing Love Remains at the time, and again that record. I mean, I worked in record shops at the time. I mean, it really tanked. There was no sort of two ways about it. It's a bit like, this is Paul McCartney. This is we can't not be selling Paul McCartney. And Only Love Remains at the time just felt a bit like, oh, McCartney by numbers. And this is at a point where certainly in the British press, he was sort of quite out of favour. So I really didn't give it the credit it should have. More fool me. I'm going to go away and lock myself in a room with it. Probably this one actually. Yes, but thank you. Brilliant. I'm really, really going to look forward to that.
And when you've fully appraised Press to Play, you'll come back here on the channel and talk about it with us.
Yeah. Well, no, with great pleasure. With great pleasure.
All right. So we both did our 10. These are great.
No, I haven't finished. I got my 10.
Yeah, Daryl.
I got my final one. I've been holding this back, so I can't not say it.
Okay.
Lovely, soppy McCartney. Beautiful. If I only had one love, yours would be the one I'd choose. Heaven on a Sunday from Flaming Pie. Just again, a bit like Loving Song, but when McCartney sort of sets the whole climate of the record, almost, it's like you're here, you listen to that, and obviously, why I mentioned the man earlier. He wants to be Ernie Isley at times and give it that sort of feeling of that beautiful. I mean, to me, it's like it works with Summer Breeze, the Isley Brothers version of Summer Breeze. You got that lovely feeling. You've also, James making his debut where they're sort of chasing the guitar solos together. And of course, it's a bit sort of, McCartney, a rhyme, to go from heaven on a Sunday to Devon on a Monday.
Right.
But that's perfect. You know, I've been on holiday in Devon on a Monday, and Devon is a part of Britain which is a, you know, beautiful countryside and everything. And you can just imagine, you know, having your fingers in the bay. You know what he said. You know, song with a long lost lonely tune or whatever. If I only had one love, yours would be the one I'd choose. Just lovely. It sets, for me, it is like Summer Breeze. You put it on and you've got summer right there. It's in. I do a talk called Fast Forward where I choose six things, six records. So 6 Beatles records, 6 Northern Soul records, 6 funk records, and in my summer, you know, 6 classic summer songs. That's one of them. And you know, people don't know it, and they hear it, and it's just like, wow, another McCartney classic in waiting that people haven't heard.
There's so much power in one lyric that could be so simple. I only had one love, yours would be the one I choose. It's like, wow. It says so much right there in that one line.
Yeah.
And Paul has that gift to come up with those lines.
And again, it's one of those, it's never been played out. It's there, you know. Wouldn't it be great, him and old Rusty doing some soloing together on that, shredding, or bring one of his showbiz pals in, Mr. Grohl or someone, and you can all like go off and have a rockestra theme to it.
No, I could see one of my favorite things that Paul's done throughout his solo career is have his acoustic set, which he was doing from Wings Over America on and most of his tours. And I'd love to hear Heaven on a Sunday in that. You know, he's done Calico Skies in a set.
Yeah.
So yeah, so many incredible numbers. We have been truly blessed with so much incredible music from this man. And we're actually recording this on Paul's birthday, which I failed to say to all of you folks watching this right now. This is part of how we're celebrating Paul's 82nd birthday. So I want to thank you guys for showing up and doing this and picking your 10 favorite deep tracks, or among them. I'm sure there's plenty more. And I want to thank Paul McCartney himself for giving us this incredible catalog between Beatles and solo. It's massive. It's wonderful. There's nothing like it. All right. And thanks to all of you for watching. And we'll do this again. Maybe we'll do a Beatles one, maybe another Beatles solo. You never know. But thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you can. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
That was fun.
Okay.